Today we're going to check out a keyboard that I've seen around at clearance prices everywhere, at least here in Australia. I've had a look at other Tesoro products in the past, and the packaging follows the same elaborate designs that they have. And as you can see, we're having a look at the Tesoro Tizona mechanical gaming keyboard. They also have it called the Burning Blade, and for whatever reason they have LEET on the box as well. On the back of the box there's a bunch of features that we'll go through later, and at the top we can see that it comes with 4 switches, and this one in particular is blue, and also that it's in a US layout. Opening the box, we have the keyboard itself, which is nicely kept safe with some awesome soft cell foam, which is always good to have. And also included is a 1.8 meter long mini USB cable and a DC in cable. The keyboard has a plastic cover over it, which can be useful for some for dust protection when it's not in use. And finally we have the keyboard itself. At first glance it does hold that budget or gamery type of feel to it, which is a turn off for many, with some purple accents and interesting hard lines on the edges of the board. They cut away a lot of the edge of the keyboard to give it a more interesting shape, and it gives somewhat of a thinner profile as well. The layout is again a standard US layout, and this is great for potential aftermarket keycap options, unlike some other keyboards where the bottom row is non-standard, which is really annoying. Both sides of the keyboards are identical with 2 magnets and a USB port, which is only for power and not for data. On the rear is the mini USB port and a DC in jack. On the bottom are 2 large rubber feet and 2 flip-up feet for elevation, which are also rubber tipped, which is a nice touch. Taking off some of the keycaps, we can see that it uses blue key switches. However, these are not the German made Cherry MX key switches, but are the Chinese made Kailh key switches. This is one of the main features that brings the price so low. The Kailh Blue mechanical switches are extremely similar to the Cherry MX counterparts. They're clicky and tactile, so you'll feel the bump upon actuation and get that satisfying loud click that you like. So it's probably not recommended for an office environment, and this keyboard also uses wire style stabilizers. Looking at the keycaps themselves, they're just your standard stock ABS keycaps you can get on many keyboards. On the left is some higher quality double shot PBT keycaps from Vortex. So there's quite a difference in thickness and also less plastic in the cross stem. The lock LED section is covered in this purple area. There are 2 lights for each lock and are in red and purple, which you can't tell in this video. And you might be wondering why there are 3 LEDs when there's no numlock necessary since there's no numpad. Well, the first LED is for the gaming mode. So the gaming mode is enabled by pressing the function key and the F12 key, and honestly it doesn't seem to do too much. Basically it switches the thumb keys to /, asterisk and dash, but maybe it might be useful for some. And speaking of the thumb keys, they are an extra feature that in theory is useful and isn't included on majority of keyboards. In PC mode, H1 opens your default web browser, H2 opens up your media player, which is Groove in this case, and H3 opens Outlook, which I don't use, so it's pretty useless. And even with gaming mode, it's quite useless as well, since the keyboard has no downloadable software for programming these keys to other uses. There's also some other function key features, such as the multimedia keys at the top from F1 to F6, as well as being able to change from 6 key rollover to N key rollover, and you can also disable the Windows key, which is probably more of a gaming feature than the gaming mode stuff itself. So before I mentioned an optional numpad, and here it is. It sports the same aesthetics and matches nicely to the keyboard itself, and attaching it to the keyboard is simple by plugging in the USB and letting the magnets do the rest. The good thing about this also is that it can be put to any side of the keyboard, which can help free up some space for the mouse for infrequent use of the numpad. However, this does add a bit of length to the keyboard, even in comparison to a full-size keyboard. This is it next to a standard tenkeyless keyboard. The numpad, however, can be used on its own. I assumed that the DC in cable was to help power the numpad, but I had no problems using the numpad without the cable. Now I was going to disassemble the keyboard for closer inspection, but I found it impossible because of this little bulge at the top which looks to hold the I/O and such, and in the process I scratched up the board in some places and broke off one of the switches from the thumb keys. And as we can see, this is obviously not a mechanical key switch, but a tiny switch similar to a mouse switch, but I can easily resolder this back later. So yeah, unfortunately I can't check out the soldering and confirm the materials used, but it seems like the standard ABS plastic shell, which is sturdy enough since it's covering the metal plate that the key switches are mounted to. And that's pretty much it. It's what you expect from a cheapy budget mechanical keyboard. It does use the Chinese clone switches, which in my opinion are just fine, especially for this price, and it has a typical plastic body construction, which still has that metal plate which gives that well-known mechanical keyboard weight to it. It does have a few extra functions that aren't too great, however the optional numpad is a really good inclusion and idea.